So I'm constantly trying to start arguments with myself because you're always looking for where's the point of friction. Two people have to disagree on something for there to be a scene. I'm jumping up and down, and sometimes if it's going really well, I get way out in front of myself. I'll be kind of running around my office or running around my house doing the scene, realizing it's been 4 pages since I have typed anything. I better get, I've been saying it all, I just haven't been writing it.
So where were you when it occurred to you that you could use the line, dating you is like dating a stairmaster, which is like a line that every woman in the world wishes she'd thought of at some point or another?
I never knew that, that it was going to be so cathartic for women. It wasn't an aha moment for me any more than You Can't Handle the Truth was. These things just they happen in the natural flow of writing something, and and sometimes something catches on, as I understand that has.
Questions from the audience? Yeah, Kevin.
Yes, a lot of your work, especially your TV projects, take place in really unique settings, and I'm wondering what your process is. Are you trying to come up with new, unique settings first and let the characters follow based on that? Do you have characters that inform a setting?
No, I think it's more the first that you said. I like going behind the scenes of things that we usually don't get to see. It would occur to me first to, I wonder, how about a series that takes place in Industrial Light and Magic? And then start populating. How about showing what these guys do? That's cool what they do, and we never get to actually see them do it. We only see the result of them doing it. And I'll bet you it would be populated by really interesting people, and you'd meet your best friend there, and you'd meet your girlfriend there, and that's a really interesting world. And then the next thing I would have to think of are what are the week-to-week conflicts that happen. Again, where are the points of tension so that, because this isn't a hospital emergency room or a police precinct. And so that's how I get to the West Wing of the White House, or a sports a cable show, or anything else.
Yes, David.
Jesse Eisenberg's style of delivery is very interesting in the film, and a little bit peculiar. It seems like it's something of a reflection of your style of writing and the speed with which you're going through the dialogue. At the same time, it may or may not be a reflection of Mark Zuckerberg, but it's a very interesting way of delivery that people have noticed.
Well, first of all, I completely agree with you that Jesse, hit it out of the park with this. I like a lot of people, I grew up worshiping the movie The Graduate, and I always used to wonder what it must have been like for Buck Henry, who wrote that screenplay. I always used to wonder what it must have been like for him the first time he saw Dustin Hoffman, kind of do Benjamin Braddock. And I don't wonder that anymore. I know exactly how he felt, because I was there the first time Jesse did his Mark Zuckerberg. And by the way, nobody in the cast was asked to do an impersonation of the person that they were playing. Nobody was playing Elvis or Abraham Lincoln or Babe Ruth or somebody who's physically iconic in any way. Nobody was asked to play their person. It was...
They were almost dissuaded from doing so, weren't they?
Yeah, well, they were dissuaded from meeting their doppelgangers, and for that reason, because I didn't want an Armie Hammer coming to me saying, it turns out Tyler Winklevoss, eats his spaghetti with his left hand, and I don't care. It doesn't have anything to do with the movie. I'm sorry. I'm reluctant to talk about Jesse's acting process without his permission. But I would say that what David got him to arrive at was, we're talking about a guy who has a lot of difficulty communicating. After all, he invented something that he needed. He needed a new way of socializing. So and it's unusual for me. I tend to write characters who are hyper communicative. So this was unusual. That first day of actual writing, of what would to a casual observer look like writing, instead of to a casual observer look like me watching ESPN. The first day of actual writing, it kind of suddenly occurred to me that I was writing for, these were the youngest characters that I'd ever written before. And I thought, well, I've got to, how do 19-year-olds speak? I'm going to have to do that somehow. And I wrote about a page and a half of my version of, it was horrible. It was the worst writing I've ever done. So I deleted all that and said, I'm like, this is just going to have to be written in my voice. I'm going to have to develop an affinity for this character of Mark. It was also the first time I was writing an anti-hero. And when you're writing an anti-hero, you can't judge that character. You have to have affection for the character. You have to have respect for the character. You have to be able to defend the character. So in order to do that, you find things about the character that are like yourself. I'm socially awkward too. I'm shy in a lot of situations. Like most people, I've spent a lot of time feeling like an outsider, like I have my nose pressed up against the window of something terrific that's happening on the other side. From time to time, I'll watch the show Entourage, which is a show about how much fun it is to work in Hollywood. And I'll think to myself, God, that really does look like fun. And I play myself on Entourage from time to time. There's a character, Aaron Sorkin, that I play on Entourage. That's how disconnected I feel from things. So it wasn't hard for me to empathize with Mark and do those things. And anyway, that's a long way of answering your question, which is there just was a way that Mark talked in certain situations. And Jesse found it, and David helped him find it. And by the way, going back to the very first thing we were talking about, when I read the script out loud for David at the pace that I heard it in my head when I was writing it, so he could get a timing of it, and he would time each scene. If when I read it, that first scene was 5 minutes and 7 seconds, when Jesse and Rooney Mara were rehearsing it, David would give the notes that a director gives and then finish by saying, and you're doing it at 5:45 right now. It needs to be 5:07. That's where the scene is. Just speak faster.
Did you ever reference scenes from like of Josh and Toby in The West Wing, just to show actors this is how fast it needs to be, this is what it looks like, this is how good it can be if it's delivered
The very
well?
first round of auditions, actors didn't read from The Social Network. They read from other things that I've written. They read from The West Wing or Sports Night or Studio 60 or Charlie Wilson's War, or A Few Good Men, or something. And when they read, whether it was during the first round or then starting with the second round on, they were reading from The Social Network. They read with me. So I was able to push them on in terms of pace.
Yes, Greg.
You talked about Fincher's unique vision and some of the changes that happened in course from writing a script to becoming a film. And I'm wondering, it's really a process of your project becoming someone else's over time, and what kind of emotional change do you go through when you see it becoming someone else's project and it changing?
I like when that happens. It's not me giving it up. It's me. Now it becomes a lot of people's. And there's a reason I don't write things that are meant to be read. I write things that are meant to be performed. There's a reason I don't write novels where I have a direct one-on-one relationship with you. I like what happens when I like team sports more than individual sports. I like bands more than solo acts. I like what happens when a lot of people who are really good at different elements of doing it, there's the director, the designers, the actors, composers, technicians, carpenters, electricians, all these people who are really good. I like what happens when everybody comes together with one leader, the director, and puts all their talents to work on one thing. You know, of course, there are moments, and on the social network, there aren't many of them, and what few moments there are minor, where you say, you know, gee, if I were the king of the world, it would go like this. But that's a tiny price to pay for what you get out of it. So emotionally, I love when finally it's, you know, the year and a half of me by myself in a room is over, and now there are these other people who I really like, who are incredibly talented. And you know, it's the difference between writing notes on a piece of paper and then hearing the whole orchestra play it. I like that second part.
Yes.
While you were writing it or beforehand, did you ever personally use Facebook and any of that stuff before?
No.
The question is whether you personally used Facebook before you were writing it.
I
or
wasn't
during.
on Facebook when I signed up for this. I'd heard of Facebook, but I'd heard of it the way I've heard of a carburetor. I can't open the hood of my car and point to it and tell you what it does. I got a Facebook page while I was doing this so I could kind of see what it was all about, and then on the last day of photography took it down.